I just got back from a road trip with this, the 2025 GMC Sierra EV. I did 600 plus miles behind the wheel, Boston, Massachusetts to Utica, New York on Friday, back again on Sunday, and today's Monday. So I am fresh off of that experience, and I can tell you exactly what it is like to live with this vehicle. GMC is planning to release Elevation and AT4 trims of this, but they're not out yet. Currently, all we have is this guy, the Denali. So yes, it is the most expensive trim, but we can still talk about this overall as a model. We're gonna talk about it both as a truck and as an EV because it is both. We'll compare it to competitors and we'll compare it to its gas-powered counterpart, which is of course the Sierra 1500. To me, this does look a lot like other GM trucks, but it is supremely obvious that this is an EV because we have this massive body-colored portion here splashed across the face. I'm not sure that I can even call that a grille because I think a grille by definition has holes in it, right? And this does not because it doesn't need that airflow. So it looks imposing, I think, with all of this body color up here. And it's funny because this is just the same size as the Sierra 1500. It's basically just a full-size truck, but to me, it looks bigger. One example of how big this thing looks is that these 24-inch wheels don't look crazy with it, but 24-inch wheels are huge. That's wild. There are very few sort of mass-market consumer-grade vehicles that come with those. For reference, the gas-powered Sierra, the 1500, largest wheels available on that are 22s. Now, unlike the gas-powered version, the Sierra EV only comes with the crew cab and the short bed, so the 5'11" 11-inch bed. You've heard of GMC's Multi-Pro tailgate, probably even seen the commercials. Well, this has the Multi-Pro Midgate, which we will talk about when we get inside. For now, let's talk about a few features back here. Namely, we have 4 120-volt outlets and a 240-volt in the bed. This means that you could not only plug in power tools on a job site or appliances when you're camping, but you could also actually level 2 charge another EV off of your Sierra EV, which is super, super cool. It also has a vehicle to home feature, so you can use it as a backup generator. I actually attended the Silverado EV launch and they turned off the power to the home they were hosting it in and then ran it off of the truck with catering and everything, which was a really cool demonstration of what this truck can do. Since this is the Denali, I obviously have all the bells and whistles, like, for example, heated and ventilated front seats and a heated steering wheel. Now, in super cold Boston and even colder central New York, I will say I did not love that some of the materials on the steering wheel kind of interrupt the heat. It's a little jarring to bump into this metal part that's surrounding the controls or this plastic part that we have because of Super Cruise when everything else is warm and those stay cold. But it's definitely better than no heated steering wheel at all, so I will absolutely take it. Speaking of materials, they feel really nice. I like this perforated leather down here. I like the leather of the seats, the embroidery. Everything is great. Center console, this is a big vehicle, right? This is huge. I've got so much storage space. It goes really deep. And it's kind of customizable. I could slide the cup holders all the way back underneath there if I wanted to, push that tray out of the way. There's another level down here, so lots of room for storage, which is great. Obviously, the most salient feature from the front seat here is this massive touchscreen, tablet style. I know a lot of people have strong opinions about the tablet style and about touchscreens that are tacked on instead of integrated into the dash. So let us know, what do you think? Does that bother you? Is it something you don't really care about? So here we can see that Multi-Pro Midgate feature that I mentioned. This side obviously is already open. We'll do it over here so you can see that's super light and easy. Got a button to fold down the headrest, then I just pull this. There goes the seat, again, really light. I have another button, releases this, still really light, everything's super lightweight, and now I basically have my bed expanded without being exposed to the elements, so I can fit things in here that are nearly 11 feet long, and we could still have somebody seated on this side if we wanted to, so it's a super, super convenient feature. So your backseat passengers still benefit from this panoramic sunroof. Plenty of visibility on that. It's huge. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't close, it doesn't open, there's no shade, it just sits there. For me, I've had this on mostly cloudy days. It's winter here in New England, so it's been pretty gray. not a problem. Dave did do a video review of the Silverado EV out in sunny California, and he did say it was annoying that he didn't have a shade he could close over that. So it's something to be aware of. Presumably if you buy this, you'll use it year round, right? Now, this back seat, very spacious. I've got so much room here, and my passengers, when I spent the weekend with it visiting family, also commented on that. We've got way more legroom front and rear than you would have in the Cybertruck. Bit more than the F-150 Lightning too. Headroom up front is a little bit better than both of those. In the back though, the F-150 Lightning gives you just a little more headroom than this does. Right before this, I spent a week with the Hyundai Ioniq 6, which has an 11 cubic foot trunk. This has an 11 cubic foot frunk, so we've got plenty of cargo storage space. That's right around the same size as the Rivian R1Ts. It's smaller than the F-150 Lightnings. That's a little over 14 cubic feet. Tesla Cybertrucks, though, is only 7.1. The Sierra EV has 2 electric motors, so total power output is 760 horsepower and 785 pound-feet of torque. That's in max power mode. It's capable of 800 watt DC fast charging at speeds of up to 350 kilowatts, and I did actually experience that in public, which was super impressive and super convenient. So it does, of course, start to slow charging speeds when you reach around 80% battery capacity. That's just something that it does to help defend the long-term life of the battery. But it is true what GMC says, that it could add up to 100 miles of range in 10 minutes. And again, super convenient. I really liked that on my road trip. So those 2 electric motors also mean that it has E4-wheel drive, and let's talk about what that means, because in some ways it actually has an advantage over mechanical 4-wheel drive. If you picture something like the Toyota E all-wheel drive system on the Sienna or the Camry, that's basically the same setup as the front-wheel drive versions, and then they just add a small electric motor on the rear axle. But since it's only like 50 horsepower or so, you're not getting an even split front and rear. Here, our front and rear motors are more or less equally powered. That means that the vehicle has so much more flexibility in terms of it's sending 50% power to the front, 50% to the rear, and then it can decide in the moment how much it wants to send to the left and right of each axle depending on the traction demand. So it really gives it a lot more capability to respond to the situation, and you don't have to worry about the lockers. Of course, the big thing everyone wants to know about when they're considering an EV is range. What's that experience like? And I am ready to tell you. So we're going to compare that not only to other EVs, but also to the gas version of the Sierra. The Sierra 1500 with the crew cab, short bed, and 4-wheel drive, so the comparable one, has 3 different engine options. You've got a turbo diesel, which obviously takes diesel. There's a 5.3-liter 8-cylinder that takes regular gas, and there's a 6-liter 8-cylinder that takes premium gas. For comparison's sake, I'm going with the one that takes regular gas, just assuming that's kind of your average Sierra 1500. In that configuration, the Sierra 1500 comes with a 24-gallon gas tank. So if we take the EPA rating of 19 miles per gallon highway, that means we can expect a maximum range of 456 highway miles on a full tank of gas. Comparing that to the EV, the Denali extended range has a GM estimated range of 390 miles. This one, max range that I just spent the week with, this has a GM estimated range of 460 miles. So basically right there with a full tank of gas. This means that if I'm setting out fully charged or fully gassed up, I can expect to go pretty much the same distance, and it's my physical needs that are going to be the limitation, not the truck's, regardless of propulsion method. To be sure of being totally fair with comparisons, I also want to talk about your sort of average EV, because this has a 200 plus kilowatt hour battery pack, which is absolutely not average. So Tesla Model Y, that's the best-selling EV here in the US. That has a roughly 80 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that gives its range an upper limit of 320 miles with all-wheel drive. So there you go. One other thing about range, we know that cold can ding it a little bit. With this, I parked it overnight and I only lost 7 miles of range to the cold. It still said 52% capacity both last night and this morning, so really not that bad. In terms of driving experience, this is pretty familiar, aside from the fact that acceleration, this is effortless. Way more than you would think that it should be for something that weighs over 9,000 pounds. Other than that though, if you like full-size trucks, you will probably like driving this. It's very intuitive and familiar. It's even got a little bit of that kind of shudder that you get from a typical body-on-frame vehicle. The 24-inch wheels are not helpful at all with sharp impacts, you know, potholes and things like that. It's really jarring, but other than that, the ride is really nice. The adaptive air suspension is doing a very good job. This is also surprisingly maneuverable for its size, thanks to the four-wheel steering. The mirrors are not great. I do expect sort of better, bigger, and more useful and functional mirrors on a truck, maybe the two-part kind, for example, although I did also complain about the massive towing mirrors in the Sequoia, so I at least like that these are small and they're not blocking my view out the window. Generally, visibility in here is not great, especially over my right shoulder. There's a massive blind spot that I definitely noticed on the highway. I was really happy about the blind spot monitoring, and I've made huge use of the camera system. So I'm really interested to see if that's going to be standard when the lower trims come out, because it's been absolutely critical to my enjoyment of this vehicle. I did experience poor weather conditions in this, and I mean like the Apple Weather app was saying heavy snow, not just snow. And this was so confident, so stable in terms of handling. It was really awesome. That's a perfect example of where the massive weight of this vehicle becomes a true benefit. It was windy. I did not feel at all like I was being blown around. I just felt like I'm in control of this vehicle and I'm in control of this adverse weather situation. So that was awesome. Now, fortunately, I did not experience an emergency braking situation. So all I can really say about that is that with the GMC Hummer EV, which does share a platform, I have seen a lot of reviewers saying the brakes are inadequate, but I've not had that feeling driving this. Speaking of braking, obviously with an EV, you get regen. You can turn on one pedal drive in here, but you don't have to. You can get a super familiar and intuitive driving experience. And then there's this paddle on the steering wheel, which is just one lone paddle, which is kind of interesting. It turns out to be braking. You can turn up the regen, but it's not clicking through increments. It's actually continuous. So I can, coming up on a red light, I can just start to squeeze on the paddle, and this is basically like I'm squeezing on the brake pedal. I can actually come to a complete stop. Now, I don't know if this is talking to the friction brakes or if it's just talking to the electric motors. Not sure I could use it to brake from a really high speed, but from here, I haven't touched the pedals, I'm just stopped. And now I can take my hands off and just wait till it turns green and step on the accelerator. So that's kind of nice. It's not one pedal driving, it's one paddle driving. One more thing, I do not love the always on nature of this. It's one of those get in, press the brake, and now the vehicle's on and running. Get out, lock it, and it's off. I don't like that, and I did have one situation where I just got in briefly and then something was missing. Some kind of cue that lets it know now I want to turn it off is missing. I'm trying to walk away, it's beeping at me, it's still running. Fortunately, there is a vehicle off button down here, so you can use that in a pinch. This giant touchscreen, which we've mentioned before, this is 16.8 inches. Remember, they're measured diagonally. We do have a lot of the functions in here, like climate control. Not sure it's really worth complaining about that because that's just more and more common these days. It's got a bunch of cool features though, like this vehicle status. I can look at the energy usage. I can look at the tire pressure, 59 and 65, kind of wild. So that's neat. Then we've got our driver information display here. This is 11 inches. What's really interesting is that the head-up display is 14 inches, so bigger than our digital gauge cluster. That's super unusual. Honestly, it didn't look bigger to me when I was using it, but it's kind of a cool stat. We have a 7-speaker Bose audio system here, which does not sound impressive at all, especially if you look at, for example, the top trim of the Ram 1500, which has 23 speakers. 7 feels a little bit weak sauce, but it sounded pretty good. And it's hard to know what's going to be standard and what's going to be optional once our lower trims come out. But we do know that they are not going to have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto because this doesn't. Honestly, it was okay road tripping with it because it does have native Google Maps, which was really handy. I liked that I could also look at that in here or see directions in my head-up display, so it didn't really matter what my partner was doing in the screen. I could still follow right along with directions. I also want to mention the camera views. There are so many great camera views, and it's really kind of fun, super helpful with parking. We even have one where we can look at the bed. Right now you can just see my tonneau cover. Super Cruise capability is standard, at least on the Denali. Comes with 3 years included, and then if you want to maintain that service, you will have to pay for the subscription. We don't know yet what's going to be standard versus optional once the lower trims are available, but the Silverado EV gives us a good clue. Lower trims of that do include some driver assistance features that are typically sold as extra cost options, like rear cross traffic alert, blind spot monitoring, and thank goodness, the surround view camera system. So that all looks pretty promising for the GMC version. So since the lower trims aren't out yet, our effective base trim for the GMC Sierra EV is the Denali Extended Range. That makes our effective base price $91,995 with destination. The max range version starts at $100,495, and then our as tested price is $102,085. Almost everything is standard on this trim. The exceptions are the tonneau cover, this thunderstorm gray color, and a dual level charge cord. The Sierra EV does not cost that much more than the Silverado EV, at least in the comparable trim, which would be the RST, clocking in right around $96,500. Next closest competitor is probably the F-150 Lightning. That's a little bit more affordable at around $87,000 for the top platinum trim, at least for 2024. Then we can look at the Rivian R1T, the Cybertruck. This thing's pricing is closest to the Cyber Beast and the Rivian R1T Tri-Motor, but it has more range than either of those. If you're shopping for an electric truck, you probably want to look at every vehicle that I've mentioned in this video. If you're shopping first for a truck and second for one that happens to be electric, you might already be married to a particular brand, and that's okay. It's pretty common with truck people, can't really fault you for it. Regardless of what you're looking for, we have tons of info to help you out, from real-time pricing trends, detailed reviews, and spec information over at CarGurus.com to, of course, our full library of thorough video reviews like this one here on this channel. Definitely take advantage of our huge inventory when you're ready to do your shopping, but please subscribe before you go.